For your second element of design project, you are going to create a cup paper collage that focuses on the element of design shape. Here is a project sample of a potential outcome that you could have for your project. So to elaborate on what you are doing, you are going to create a cut paper collage in your portfolio. You will use the element of shape and the use of overlap and other compositional skills to create something visually interesting for your viewers. Our learning targets are the same as our last project, so we're still focusing on creating work that is focusing on an art technique. We're going to use our thumbnail stages to create a plan for this project, incorporating new materials. So we haven't used any collage aspects yet before, and analyzing our artwork as we continue to make it and post the production of the piece with a reflection process. So here are the directions for how to do it. In addition to these directions, there is a YouTube video that will be linked to Google Classroom and is linked in this PowerPoint for you to use. I want you to think about the rules of composition a little bit. So we're going to talk about the three main rules that you should keep in mind throughout the remainder of the semester. So our first guy is the rule of thirds. Over here, we have the compositional rule that basically divides your piece into 3 columns vertically and 3 rows horizontally. So what this means is instead of centering your piece, we want to avoid having our piece's focal point stuck directly in the center. A person's eye automatically goes to the center of a page when they are looking at something. So we want to make sure that your viewer is able to look around your piece and find what they're looking for. So it's just suggested to offset whatever your focal point is a little bit to one of these 4 intersecting points, and it'll just bring a little bit of a more interesting piece to the viewer. Then we also want to talk about our focal point. So using something that's bold with a lot of contrast like this guy has, or creating something that is a bright color, a different color than other things that you're using that draws your viewer's eye straight to that point so that there's a clear reason for whatever is happening in this piece. So when it's something that's not abstract, usually that's like where the figure would be or something like that. But in abstract pieces like your collages, just having a little bang for your buck and making sure that something is showing up there. And then the last thing I want you guys to focus on is using overlap. These collages are going to be way more interesting if you start building your shapes and gluing them on top of each other so that they have a more descriptive way to show a sense of depth in your piece. If you cut out a bunch of little shapes and then glue them next to each other, it's going to look more like a pattern than an actual interacting composition. So making sure you have a sense of overlap. If you follow those 3 compositional rules, you should be all set for making an interesting composition. When you're ready to start planning, you are going to create your thumbnails for this project. So what I want you to do is take your sketchbook page and divide it into fourths. So we're going to have 4 small rectangles on one sketchbook page. You are going to draw 4 different compositions that include at least 15 different shapes. So when I say different shapes, just individual shapes, you can have more than one triangle or square or anything like that. Your shapes should be combining geometric and organic shapes. It does not need to be limited to only triangles. You can have a nice variety. Think about playing with the size of your shapes as well as the different styles of your shapes, and then figure out how you could layer these pieces to make them interesting. So just because you have a complicated shape doesn't mean you need to see every aspect of that shape. Then we're not going to do a rough draft for these because it's just cutting the construction paper and kind of letting whatever happens in that stage. So on your final design piece of paper from your portfolio, you're going to create a 1-inch border around the portfolio page. When you are ready to add more information, you're going to cut out your shapes from your colored paper to match whatever thumbnail you are trying to replicate. So if you decide you don't like any of your 4 thumbnails, you can take some features of one thumbnail and some from another and kind of smush them together to make a new composition. You can always draw on your construction paper or colored paper to get the shape down before you cut it because scissors are kind of final. And then when you're ready, you're going to glue down your pieces to create whatever your desired composition. So when you find this link for the slideshow, this is a direct link for the video, which will be a YouTube link for you to see exactly how I put together the project sample, which you can follow the steps for. Some things that I want you to consider as you're making this. Even though we haven't talked about the element of design of color, I want you to start thinking about how colors work together. I would strongly recommend, even though I'm going to give you the whole rainbow of paper, or you might have even more options at your house, do not use more than 3 to 4 colors as your color scheme. These colors should work together. So if you don't know what colors go together, you're not really sure about matching or contrast or things like that, check out this website that's on this slideshow. It'll bring you to a scheme generator option so you can figure out what sort of colors work together. You can also consider using other pieces of paper than the construction paper that I give you. Tissue paper, scrapbooking paper, wax paper, tin foil, patterned wrapping paper, all of these different things you might have in your house. Even if you have neon colored paper and you want something a little bit more bright and exciting, bring that into school or work on it at your house with these little flares of paper. And then lastly, I would recommend using an X-Acto knife for your more complicated shapes. The video goes in depth of what kind of precautions you should take when using an X-Acto knife for cutting. All right, so my plan is that this project is going to be due next Wednesday, October 7th. At the start of your Wednesday meet,